Welcome everyone. This is the Dance is Medicine podcast. My name is Celine Sophia. I'm a neuroscientist, dance healer, and dancer. And I've created this podcast to help people get more information about dance healing, but also to hear stories from the perspective of dancers who have dealt with a lot of problems, health problems, and have used dance in order to cope or heal with their health problems. But also I like to give perspective from people who have dealt and helped other dancers heal their problems through dance. So today we have Sara, and she's going to give us a perspective of the researcher. Now, Sara, she's a book author. She has worked with dancers with Parkinson's, and I'm so excited to hear what she has to say from her experience on how she has seen dance helping people with Parkinson's and what she knows about it, because it's really interesting that more and more dance is being used to help Parkinson's, Huntington's, Alzheimer's, all kinds of neurological disorders. And it's important that we kind of know and have a perspective from a researcher as well, what is known out there study-wise. So with no further ado, Sara, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us all that you can and know about this fascinating subject?
Hello. So my name is Sara Houston, and I'm a researcher and a dance academic working at the University of Roehampton in London in the UK. And I've been researching the experience of people dancing with Parkinson's for the last 10 years, primarily and at first with English National Ballet, one of the large-scale ballet companies in London, and this led to really interesting dialogue with artists and people with Parkinson's around the world, particularly in Europe and America and Australia, but in other places too, like Dubai and India. So my sources are worldwide, and this has allowed me to amass a lot of information about the phenomenon actually of dancing with Parkinson's, because it is a phenomenon. I wrote up my thinking in a book in 2019 called Dancing with Parkinson's, and but before that I also carried out mixed methods measurement and observational studies on people with Parkinson's too. I guess I should say that most of the dancers that I'm looking at, that I've been working with, are community dancers, so dancers who dance for fun rather than professionally. Although in my travels, I've come across a few professional dancers with Parkinson's too, and they've provided an interesting insight into dancing because they've come from that place of dance. I think it's important to say from the outset maybe what Parkinson's is. The most typical symptom that a lot of people think of when if they have Parkinson's is tremor. So they'll see limbs trembling very fast. This is also accompanied by a slowness of movement, what we call bradykinesia, and also stiffness, a rigidity of muscles. Often people with Parkinson's find it difficult to keep balance, and they'll fall over a lot every day. And they'll often walk with a shuffle, which gets faster and faster until they fall over. There are also other symptoms which are cognitive. So there's a slowness of cognition, or there's also people that can lose the ability to speak clearly. This is often misinterpreted as being drunk. And handwriting can get smaller, and there's a variety of other quite serious symptoms. Basically, because of this myriad of different symptoms, motor symptoms and other different symptoms, it affects people's quality of life quite drastically. It's mainly people over 50 who have Parkinson's, although about 20% are younger than that. And so, yeah, so that's kind of, in a nutshell, at a very basic level, what Parkinson's is. So in terms of dancing, one of the things that you will see immediately, actually, with your own naked eye, you don't have to be a kind of high-flying researcher to notice this, is when you see people enter the dance class. They'll often shuffle in, they'll be bent over, they'll walk with a stick or two, and they'll want to sit down, and in general their symptoms will be noticeable. When the dancing starts, you'll see a transformation that people who had difficulty in using their in creating strides which are measured, in creating movement which is dynamic, and so if they had difficulty beforehand, during the dance class something happens in that they can walk in time to a beat, that they can explore with different dynamics, often quite strong dynamics as well, and reach out further in their kinesphere than they had previously. I've noticed quite a number of times, actually, that when it's time to go home, some people will forget their walking sticks and they will just walk out without them, quite normally, quite happily. So there's something about the dance class itself that you can see in there, which indicates that dancing temporarily, and it is sadly temporarily, can lessen some of the symptoms of Parkinson's. It was clear that people found it easier to, for example, reach up to a shelf to pick a tin off the shelf, or do up a jacket, or get into the bath. About 3 days after dancing, they found those tasks much easier to carry out. So on that level, I think dancing with Parkinson's is interesting because it lessens symptoms. One of the things that we also found, and I think is even more striking, is that there were a number of people across the world who said that dancing has changed their life, that they are approaching life differently, and that it has helped them come to terms with the fact that they have a degenerative disease, which they will carry with them for the rest of their lives. And it's this, rather than or as well as the temporary lessening of Parkinsonian symptoms, which is the most striking thing about dancing. So that People said to me, I feel free when dancing. I feel a sense of freedom, a sense of freedom from being, from having Parkinson's, from being judged as having a nasty condition or being drunk or however um, they were misunderstood. That they felt free to enjoy the life that they had in the company of others who understood. Um, they also, some people also felt that they felt good. They felt good inside. Some even said, I feel beautiful, I feel lovely, I feel graceful. And although these particular words are very kind of even old fashioned, but very kind of traditional words associated with dance, it's really interesting and quite profound that these people with Parkinson's who are not graceful, who don't feel nice all the time, can state, actually, when I'm dancing, I do feel graceful, I do feel lovely, and it makes me feel good. It makes me feel better about myself and about my identity as a person with Parkinson's.
Oh,
So, yes, so that was,
oh,
I
okay.
quite striking. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's just it's so awesome, and I'm loving everything that you are saying. And thank you for explaining that from your perspective, because you have actually worked with these people and you know how they feel exactly, because you know you experienced it firsthand. So you experienced firsthand working with them, and it's just like 3 points that you say that I wanted to mention, and like this is very interesting. So you said, it really improved their motor abilities, and this idea that they look drunk, and this is because the parts of the brain that are responsible for voluntary movements, and the most famous one is called the basal ganglia, which is basically a conjunction of structures responsible for voluntary movements. And alcohol, for instance, really affects that parts of the brain, and this is why we get all the motor responses to alcohol. And this is exactly where disorders such as Parkinson's and Huntington's and dystonia happen. The basal ganglia it's very important that the basal ganglia is working properly, because it's what adjusts movement for you, it's what ensures that you're doing the right amount of movement, it plans actions, it's very connected to reward and addiction and planning behavior. And there's a part of the basal ganglia called the substantia nigra that is one of the areas of the brain that produces dopamine. So there's only two, and this is one of them. And when the substantia nigra starts working properly, it starts causing all the problems that we see in Parkinson's. And then there's a cognitive decline. There's a lot of things that happen with it. And what happens in dance? Dance is like the greatest example of voluntary movement. And it's not just voluntary movement. It's not just running, going to the gym. It's not just movement that it's basic. So in quote marks, it's basic. And I don't want to say that some sports are not complex, but dance is extremely complex because it requires a lot of things. It requires the motor level, the connection level, the communication, the emotion. It requires a lot of different parts of the brain. But especially it trains a lot the basal ganglia, because suddenly that part of the brain is challenged to do movements, completely new complex movements that have to be on a certain beat, on a certain rhythm. Then again, the basal ganglia loves rhythm. So anything that it has to do with rhythm, the basal ganglia is all up for it. So it trains that part too, that the rhythm will also add to the basal ganglia to challenge it. And we know that so areas of the brain that are used often, neural pathways that are used often, are very difficult to destroy. And so when dance is applied to movement disorders, it's kind of like retraining all those structures that were damaged to work again. And this is where dance can really be helpful for movement disorders. And then he also mentioned another thing, that these people felt free. They felt that they had like this new sense of identity. And this is where, movement disorders or anything that has to do with the body will affect your sense of identity. And so, Parkinson's and illnesses, that anything that affects our body, if it's an injury or pain or suddenly uncontrollable movement, will affect our sense of self. So that's then again can come in and give that sense of control, that sense of identity, to the people who are suffering from those movement disorders, because suddenly they are dancers. They're not someone with Parkinson's. And I had another dancer here in the podcast that she also helped people with Parkinson's, and she was assisting them in dancing. And she said that they felt like they were dancers. So they didn't see themselves as people with illnesses, but they saw themselves as dancers, and they came into the room as dancers, and they had that new identity. And also there's a community aspect that you mentioned, that having, I think, and I was saying to in that podcast too, that just a sense of just a community, the sense of having that support connection is very important for the brain too. Maybe it's not regarded as, when people think about, okay, let's improve the brain, people think about cognition, people think about reading and training the brain in various ways. But people forget that community and the sense of connection with others is one of the most powerful and important things for the brain too. So there's that side that then again dance can bring. And then the cognition, because then again dance requires a lot of cognition. It works your brain so hard. People may see dance as something that it's a hobby, it's a fun thing to do, but I don't think people realize how much it works your brain. It's as much work as having to read a book or do something more that seems that is more cognitively complex. So it has all those three aspects joined together, and I think from my perspective is what makes it so amazing. But yeah, I don't want to interrupt you more, so you can continue. Thank you so much for sharing that.
That's fine. I think what you're saying is really true. Dance is, I think dance works because it is multi-layered. You can access it on different levels as well. So you can come to dance because of intellectual curiosity. You can come to dance to get fit. You can come to dance because of the social aspect. You can come to dance because it makes you feel joyful. All of these things. So I think although there are barriers for people, particularly for certain people to access dance culturally, actually dance is can be very accessible to people on another level. And I think the important thing, this multi-layeredness of dancing really is really useful when thinking about what makes a beneficial healing practice. And I think dance fits this because of its complexity, its connection with emotion, its connection with movement, and so on. let's not forget the music as well. Though not all dances has an affiliation with music, an awful lot does, and a lot of people come to dance through music, and particularly people with Parkinson's. They've some people have discovered that, you know, if you walk with your iPod, if you carry one around with you, and you start to get stuck in terms of your movement, listening to music, particularly at a particular range, a particular speed and pulse, this will unstick you, listening to the music and moving to it. It's it's quite good, and I think it's because, as you mentioned, because of the different areas of the brain which can light and a different pathway for you, even though the basal ganglia is being replete of or depleted of dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
So music, I think, plays an important role, but there's things like learning, motor learning, and memory recall, which are important skills to relearn when one has Parkinson's. The idea that there are various qualities and dynamics to dancing also helps people whose movement habits have become very, very contained and focused. So actually, it's really freeing for somebody with a very, very contained movement pattern to actually experience and be able feel that they are able to extend their kind of pattern of movement wider in terms of its dynamics and qualities. Um, and so dancing on various levels has really is really important in terms of, and really useful in terms of this kind of um, healing process. But it's also, and you mentioned the community aspect being an important part, and it really, really is. I've seen so many people really feeling grateful for the fact that here was a community of people, like-minded in that they all liked dance, not that they all had Parkinson's, although that was true as well. And so, I mean, Parkinson's affects people, each individual, very differently because there are so many different symptoms. So there won't be anyone with exactly the same symptoms as the other. But they all will have experienced similar trauma, similar sense of denial and chaos at the beginning, and a group who understands that and yet wants to meet because they are passionate about dancing. That's really therapeutic. That can allow people to feel that they are somewhere special. Not that they are in the hospital waiting room, not that they are in the Parkinson's support group, but they are in an artistic setting. And I want to, that's great that one of your other interviewees mentioned this idea that people with Parkinson's come as dancers. And this is an incredibly powerful and very common notion that that happens, that people either call them, I mean, not everyone likes to call himself a dancer. There are some people who say, oh no, I've still got 2 left feet, but they still come. They're still present and they're still part of the community. But a lot of people say, no, I am a dancer, and I can do this. I'm capable. And so it changes people's identity. It changes people's attitude towards themselves and people's attitude towards them. I mentioned the word capable just now, and I think that's something that's also a sense that gives people a lot of encouragement and confidence. What we found in one of the studies that we did was that we were measuring a group of people with Parkinson's who were dancing and a group of people with Parkinson's who were not dancing, a control group as it's called. And what we found was that over a period of 3 years, people's Parkinson's was degenerating. And that was common and the same, more or less, between the dancing group and the non-dancing group. So in other words, dancing doesn't prevent Parkinson's from happening. What was interesting was that actually the way the dancing group were talking about how they could do things was very different to how the non-dancing group was talking. So in actual fact, the dancing group felt themselves to be more capable. They perceived themselves, each individual, as being capable. I can still do this. Whereas we weren't having the same conversations with those without Parkinson's. And what was clear was that the dancing was giving them the tools in which to act, the tools in which to do things, and to still do things and to still keep doing things. And not only that, the dance community was giving them the confidence to go out and do something different, to change people's lives. So, for example, there was one man who decided to open a drop-in centre for carers in his local area. There was another group of dancers who decided to set up a singing group. Over in the States, there was one man who, on experiencing dancing, decided to set up his own dance group, and then to say, actually, we need a whole load of different activities here, and has now established a whole kind of community based around arts and sports activity for people with Parkinson's. It all stems from this initial excitement that the group had about dance. So I think capability is really important, and capability means more independence for longer, which for a degenerative disease is very, very important, and for the cost of health is also very important. So capability is a big yes from dance.
Awesome. I love that, the capability. And wow, that was really good, everything that you said. And yes, you are right. Just music therapy on its own, it's just an amazing thing. And I always say this, just music is great. Now add dance to that and we're on a new level of healing. And as I said, the basal ganglia is sensitive to rhythm, and we were wired to move to rhythm and music. And so the way that music triggers our motor systems is different from any other way. And when it comes to music and rhythm, it's processed differently, and it really triggers our vestibular system, which is a system that we have in our inner ears, that will sense motion. And this vestibular system has access to a lot of areas in the brain that the auditory system on its own doesn't have. So the cornea doesn't have access. So there's this specific trigger from music and rhythm that triggers different areas and limbic areas, so emotional areas, and it triggers this motor area. So there's again another pathway through where those motor systems are triggered, and this is why music can be helpful. And also, I wanted to mention, just because, so the first guest dancer I had for this podcast, Karina, she shared a really interesting thing with me, because she said she was dealing with depression, and she said that dance has helped her, because if she woke up in the morning and she really struggled to get out of bed, which is something very common to people with depression, she would put a song and just let her body start moving on its own. So she would just let her body start swaying, and she would dance her way out of bed because the music was moving her body and she didn't have to do all that mental effort. So this is how powerful, and when she said that, I was like, wow, this is so amazing. And then also the belief, the capability. Then again, the capability comes from the belief, and the believing that you can do something. And this, then again, has to do with the basal ganglia too, because basal ganglia is responsible for voluntary movement, but as I said before, is also responsible for obtaining pleasure, avoiding aversive situations, and reward, and addiction. And addiction can be good or bad. So and all those areas are being triggered too, and that kind of gives that sense of, when people in general, not only people with Parkinson's, but people in general dance, they feel the feeling of reward. There's this reward coming straight away. So this reward is related to motivation. So it will motivate people in doing things and doing more of that. And when it comes to the basal ganglia, there's a specific part of the basal ganglia that is there, making sure that you do things that get you pleasure and avoid things that may be painful. So then again, this will reinforce that, okay, dance is rewarding, is giving you pleasure, and the brain just wants to do more of it. And that's very powerful for motivation and capability. And then it's the other thing that you mentioned, that they were dancing despite. So obviously there are barriers to dancing when you have an injury or a motor disorder, but he's dancing despite that. And I think that's very powerful, because there's this idea that you need to have the perfect body and perfectly healthy body and mind, and you need to be super fit to dance, and that's not true. And a lot of people who develop injuries or illnesses, they stop. And I'm saying this because I've done that myself. When I had a problem in my left hip, I stopped dancing because I thought I needed rest, and I spent months resting, and then when I started dancing, that's when it got better. So it's this stop shouldn't be there. So it's about adjusting the dance to the body, because we are not here to benefit dance. Dance is there to benefit us. So it's about adjusting, and like, I still have the same problem, but I don't do things on the left. Things that will put a lot of weight on my hip, I won't do it on the left. I'll just do it on the right, and that's fine. So it's about adjusting. And the same dancer that I mentioned now, Karina, she had scoliosis, and she said it helped her a lot. So she could have stopped dancing, but she used dance to strengthen her back. So then again, very, very, very powerful. And then there's the other part, dance will not cure your Parkinson's, it will not prevent it, as you said, but it's very powerful in keeping your brain strong. Because then again, dance is working those specific areas. And as I said before, things that we use a lot in our brain, they become really strong. The brain is very resilient. If it's used to do an activity and an illness comes around to destroy the neurons or to disrupt the brain structures, the brain is very resilient in trying to do it in another way. So when the brain is wired, it's proper wired. It's very resilient. So this works for the good and the bad. If you are a person who never moves and you're sitting around and just lying down all day, then that's what the brain knows, and that's how resilient you'll be. But if you are a person who's very active and really challenged, if you really challenge yourself, then the brain will respond in the same way. And this is where it can be very beneficial. If disease does come around to your brain, it's gonna have a freaking hard time if you've been a dancer because it's gonna have a hard time destroying everything that you so strongly wired. And then this is why it also helps when you already have an illness. And I had a very interesting Facebook Live with a dancer. She has multiple sclerosis, and she was telling me how dancers helped her and has helped her in accepting the illness, which you were saying before, but also it has helped her having way worse symptoms that she has at the moment. So, Sarah, thank you so much for everything that you said. It was beautiful. Is there anything else you would like to add, or anything you'd like to say to the dancers that are hearing us right now? Because there's probably dancers who have Parkinson's, or people who have Parkinson's, but they haven't even thought about dancing yet. So is there anything you would like to tell them?
Yes. I'm a real advocate for dance. I'm passionate about it. And if you've ever at all been interested in dance and you have Parkinson's, then give it a go. There are many classes around the world, wherever you are. If you're in the UK, there's also a Google map that you can locate a class with, and that's found on the People Dancing website. I would say a lot of people with Parkinson's and a lot of men with Parkinson's often come to dance for the first time because of their Parkinson's. They've heard that it might be useful, and so give it a go. So if you're one of those people, those people who haven't danced before but have heard it might be good, and you have Parkinson's, or you have a spouse who has Parkinson's, a partner who's Parkinson's, or a family member, then give it a go, because I think it's what's important is that you give an activity a go that you enjoy. So if dance isn't your bag, go and do tennis or golf or ice skating or something else, Tai Chi. What I think, because I think it is important that we keep on exercising, keep on moving, and keep on making our brains work. And for people with Parkinson's, this is triply important that this happens. You need to keep on moving, otherwise you will lose it quite fast. So it is important to keep moving in whatever way you find enjoyable. And lots of people have found that dancing gives them a lot of pleasure. I think I'll end there on that note.
That was great. Thank you so much. I agree with everything you said. And then again, I'm one of those who try and persuade anybody to dance. But you did well by saying if it's not your thing, we're not like persuading you or please. And it's what you said is what all dancers that I ask this kind of question say. Just give it a try.
Yeah.
It's about just trying, and if you don't like it, then I I know people who cannot enjoy dance or even enjoy watching dance. So it is what it is. It's not for everybody, but
It
it's and
might
then
be that that I mean, because there are lots of different styles and ways of
hmm
dancing, and it could be that people have tried the wrong way for
hmm
them. So it's important, give something else a go. If you really detested couple dancing, then go and do something creative dancing or some hip hop or something. Um, Try it. And the other thing to say to everyone, all the dancers who are listening who don't have Parkinson's, but who are interested in maybe facilitating this kind of specialist practice, that there are quite a few training opportunities. Um, uh, uh, there are several around the world. The main one is through Dance for PD, which is based in New York, but they train worldwide. It's part of the Mark Morris Dance Group. They have a big training set up, as has the Dance for Parkinson's Partnership in the UK. They have lots of training there, and there are various other things going around. Dance Well in Italy has also a very good training session too. So do look up if you're interested.
wow, that was great. Thank you. This is this is what I was gonna say next, and I always like to kind of like point this out or mention this in the podcasts. I think there's this idea. Okay, dance is an art form, and a lot of teachers go and teach because they love dance because it's an art form. But I think we have to remember as teachers, because you said before, maybe you didn't go to the right class, or maybe you went to the right class, but the environment was wrong. It was a bad environment. So, and I see this happening a lot, and I know teachers are not doing it on purpose, but sometimes the dance environments, the dance classes are not welcoming to everybody. So it's important to have an awareness. It's important to, and recently I had a student in UK that she reached out to me because she's doing a study, she's doing an article, but it's also a study where she is trying to change the dance environments in classes in UK. She's a dancer herself, and this is really important because many people are not aware, and many teachers are not aware that dance is an art, fair enough, but and it's a craft, but it's also a healing activity, and we need to be aware of the people that come into classes. We need to be able to be inclusive, welcoming, um, and so it's really important that we build. At the end of the day, dance is not the place for hate, judgment, discrimination. I don't think it is the place for that, even though there's a lot of that, but it's not the place for that. So we need to be really mindful, a bit more mindful, not only of teaching things, but mindful of how do we teach things, and how can we incorporate everybody. And thank you for mentioning the training, because this is something people, if you think, I would like to, maybe people are listening to us and they do have students who have Parkinson's and they want to be more helpful to them, and it's good to have all the information on where to get training. So yes, this is pretty much it. Unless you have anything else to say, Sarah, I think that's the end. It has been a nearly full hour of really, really good information. So thank you for taking the time to be here and sharing that. I think is really important for the dance community.
Thank
Oh,
you. I'm
where can we find you? So, is there
uh,
anything you'd like to give for people if they are interested in your work? Because you do have a book as well. So,
yeah, sure. So yes, my book is Dancing with Parkinson's, published by Intellect Books in 2019. You can get it from Intellect Books or Amazon or anywhere really. Um, and I have a website which actually needs a little bit of updating, but it's a website nonetheless, which is roehamptondance.com/Parkinsons. And you can find various articles and interviews and TV features on there, which might be useful. Um, and also the reports that we wrote for English National Ballet. And I think also you'll find the report on English National Ballet's website as well. So yeah, and I'm at the University of Roehampton. You can contact me there.
awesome. Thank you so much. And also, I'm just curious. This is just my curiosity. Are you a dancer too, Sarah?
I am.
Oh, okay. Because it's nice to know that you have
Yes,
both perspectives. Yes.
I trained as a dancer, as a contemporary dancer, and but have danced ballet and various other forms all my life. Um, so now I don't dance professionally at all, but I still dance for pleasure, for fun, um, in between kind of being a full-time academic. And even for my research, I often get into the studio to dance, which is great. It keeps me moving and keeps me feeling good about my body.
Awesome, awesome. Because it's just good. I feel like there's this thing that sometimes I don't want people to think, okay, so is this person's talking about dance? What do they know? And so it's good to know that you are a dancer behind all of this. Um, okay, so thank you for being here. That's the end of the podcast. To everyone listening, thank you so much for being here with us today, and I'll see you in the next podcast.
Thank you.